What happens when one of radio's most fearless personalities steps into the lion's den of daytime television and completely dismantles one of its most outspoken hosts? Today, we're diving into the moment Howard Stern walked onto The View and delivered a masterclass in how to handle someone who thought she could rattle him. Joy Behar learned fast that when you go after the king of shock radio, you'd better not miss. This is a story about ego, power, and what happens when someone finally pushes back against behavior that viewers have been complaining about for years. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below, because you're not going to believe how this situation unravels. From the second Howard Stern walked onto the View set, the tension was almost visible. The studio audience burst into applause, but something felt different. Joy Behar sat at the iconic table with her arms folded tight, already wearing the kind of expression that longtime viewers recognized as a warning sign. She had never hidden her dislike for Howard's brand of entertainment, calling it crude and inappropriate more than once over the years. Well, Joy said as Howard settled into his seat, her voice dripping with a mix of sarcasm and superiority. Look who decided to bless us with his presence today. Howard Stern, the man who built an empire on shocking people and crossing lines. Tell me, Howard, do you ever feel even a little responsible for dragging down the standards of American media? The other hosts shifted uneasily. Whoopi tried to offer a more neutral welcome, but Joy wasn't done. She leaned forward, eyes locked onto Howard with an intensity that made it clear this was not going to be a friendly interview. Howard, unfazed, smiled that familiar grin that had carried him through decades of controversy. You know, Joy, that's really interesting coming from someone who's made a career out of cutting off her co-hosts and talking over half her guests. Should I be taking lessons from you on improving media standards? The audience gasped. Joy's face flushed instantly, and her jaw tightened. She wasn't used to anyone throwing her own behavior back at her, let alone with such precision. Excuse me? Joy snapped, her voice climbing higher. I've been in this industry longer than you've been relevant, Howard. I don't need some shock jock lecturing me on professionalism. Relevant? Howard chuckled, leaning back with almost theatrical comfort. Joy, my show reaches millions every day. When was the last time anyone under 40 tuned into The View on purpose? I'm just trying to understand your definition of relevance here. A dead silence filled the studio. Joy opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her co-hosts looked like they wanted to vanish beneath the table. This wasn't following Joy's usual pattern, the one where she dominated the conversation and forced guests to defend themselves. That's completely inappropriate, Joy stammered, clearly shaken. You can't come on our show and insult our ratings. But you can come after my entire career and question my integrity, Howard replied smoothly. See, this is what fascinates me about people like you, Joy. You can dish it out non-stop, but the second someone sends it back your way, suddenly it's wrong. That's not how this works. Joy looked desperately at her co-hosts, but they all avoided her gaze. Sunny was suddenly captivated by her notes, Sarah was laser-focused on her mug, and Whoopi was trying to keep the situation from falling apart. Okay, maybe we should take the energy down a bit and talk about Howard's new book, Whoopi suggested. But Joy shook her head sharply. She wasn't backing down. Not now. No, Whoopi, I'm addressing this. Howard, you've built a whole persona of objectifying women, making crude jokes, and contributing to a culture that tears people down for entertainment. And now you want to act like you're the victim because I pointed it out. Howard leaned forward, tone shifting into something more deliberate. Joy, how many times this week alone have you interrupted your female co-hosts? How often have you dismissed their opinions or talked over them while they were trying to make their point? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're describing your own behavior. The camera caught Joy's reaction perfectly, her eyes widening, her expression freezing as though she'd just been struck. That's a broken bar right onto broken bar. That's not the same thing, she sputtered. Isn't it though? Howard pressed gently, but firmly. You've made your brand about asking the tough questions and holding people's feet to the fire. So why is it suddenly different when someone does that to you? Why do the rules shift when the spotlight turns your direction? Again, Joy searched the table for some Ioniania to save her, but her co-hosts looked just as stunned as the audience. There's a difference between tough questions and being provocative for shock value, Joy said, trying to steady herself. Oh, absolutely, Howard replied with a nod. The difference is that I'm honest about what I am. I've never pretended to be a moral compass. But you sit here every day acting like you're some kind of authority on ethics while you bulldoze through conversations and talk down to guests who don't agree with you. At least I own who I am. The studio felt heavy with tension. Joy's hands shook as she picked up her water glass, setting it down with a loud thud that echoed across the silent room. Howard wasn't done. You know what really gets me, Joy? He continued, tone casual but cutting. You talk about degrading people for entertainment. But last week, didn't you spend an entire segment mocking that young actress's outfit? What was it you called her? A disaster who needed an intervention? Joy blinked rapidly. And the week before that, you made jokes for 10 straight minutes about that politicians' weight. Extremely personal comments. But I guess that counts as valuable political analysis? That's different, Joy said, her voice strained. We critique public figures to hold them accountable. For what? Their clothes, their body, their hair? Howard asked. Come on, Joy. Even you don't believe that? You do it because it gets laughs and keeps eyes on the show, which, again, is fine. Just don't pretend you're operating from some moral throne. Sarah finally tried to help. Howard, I think what Joy means is that there's a difference between commentary and exploitation. Howard turned to her with a polite smile. Sarah, I appreciate that. But I'm sure Joy can speak for herself. Unless she suddenly lost her gift for interrupting people. A ripple of laughter rolled through a few audience members. Joy's face darkened even more. I do not dominate conversations, Joy said tightly. I facilitate discussions. Is that what we're calling it now? Howard raised an eyebrow. Joy, I've watched this show for years. I can count on one hand the number of times you let a guest finish a sentence. You've interrupted me 17 times in the last 5 minutes alone. That's not true, Joy shot back. Should we have the producers replay it? Howard asked. Better yet, let's test something. Let me speak for 60 seconds without you jumping in. Just 1 minute. Joy froze. She knew the trap. If she interrupted, he'd be right. If she stayed silent, she'd look like she was being controlled. Fine, she snapped. Go. Howard smiled, checked his watch, and began. You know, Joy, this whole moment is the perfect example of what's wrong with daytime media. You've convinced yourself your opinions matter more because you have a platform. You talk about respect and tolerance, but show neither to the people sitting next to you. You claim to uplift women's voices, yet you regularly talk over Sunny when she's dissecting legal issues, dismiss Sarah when she offers a younger perspective, and argue with Whoopi like she's new to the industry. The hypocrisy is astonishing. Joy trembled in her seat, trying and failing to stay still. When Howard finished, he checked his watch again. Would you look at that? You actually made it the whole minute. How dare you psychoanalyze me? Joy burst out. You know nothing about our backstage relationships. You're right, Howard replied calmly. I know what I see on camera, which is you dominating conversations and treating your co-hosts like props. If that's not who you really are, then maybe you need to work on hiding it better when the cameras are rolling. Joy turned desperately to Whoopi. Are we seriously letting him attack me like this? Whoopi sighed. Joy, a broken bar. He's responding to what you started. Joy looked betrayed, completely thrown off balance. Oh, here we go, Howard said as Joy's voice cracked. The strong woman card. I was wondering when you'd play it. It's not a card, it's reality. Joy snapped. You can't handle being challenged by a woman. Joy, if we're going to talk about how I treat women, we're going to have to talk about how you treat the women sitting at this table, Howard said, his tone calm but devastating. He then laid out detailed examples of Sunny's expertise being ignored, Sarah's views brushed aside, Whoopi's experience dismissed. Each point hit its mark. Joy was unraveling. "That's not how I treat them," she said weakly. "Ladies?" Howard asked, turning to the co-hosts. The silence that followed was louder than any words. Howard looked back at Joy. "You use feminism as a shield, but you don't practice it." Joy tried one final swing. "I won't sit here being lectured by someone who made millions exploiting women." "And there's another deflection," Howard said. "My audience chooses to listen. Your co-hosts don't choose to be steamrolled by you every day. So which one of us is really exploiting women?" Joy was done, exhausted, crushed. "I think we should move on," she whispered. "Oh, now you want to change topics?" Howard laughed lightly. "5 minutes ago you were ready to dissect my entire career." Joy looked toward the producers, silently begging for a commercial break. But none came. This was live TV gold. "I was asking legitimate questions," Joy muttered. "No, Joy," Howard said plainly. "You were trying to humiliate me. Instead, you exposed yourself." When Joy finally managed to say the audience could judge them both, Howard smiled. "They already have." The cameras pulled back. Joy slumped in her seat, looking like she'd just survived a 12-round fight. Howard looked relaxed, almost amused. What had begun as Joy's attempt to put Howard Stern in his place had turned into a brutal dissection of her own behavior. She picked a fight with someone who'd spent his entire career thriving on confrontation, and the outcome was predictable. Howard didn't just defend himself. He held up a mirror, and Joy didn't like the reflection. As the show cut to commercial, one thing was painfully clear: Joy Behar learned the hard way that when you go after someone who never backs down a broken bar, you'd better be ready for the fallout.